Let me use this opportunity to welcome and ask, joining us is the retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Mr. James Olatunji Colquitt. Thank you so much, Mr. Colquitt, for being with us. Mr. Colquitt, of course, naturally is a security expert, and he joins his junior colleague, ACP Frank Mba.
But he was nodding while Mr. Mba was speaking. Yes.
Now, indeed, Mr. Mba, before we took the break, you were trying to explain. You were trying to explain, indeed, where we were with the issues, and you talked about the loss of the officer in Sokoto and how the police stands in the breach for Nigerians. And I let you conclude that. And let me also say that our deepest condolences on the loss of these officers, and we hope that that does not continue. But I needed you to explain to us what that security deployment was. I made mention of the question of the use of helicopters and indeed other surveillance material, which we really didn't see so much of in the election 2 weeks ago. So I wanted you to explain what changed in the dynamics between then and now, and in what particular areas those dynamics changed.
Like I will always say, every election for us is a learning curve. And what we do at the end of every election is to look at the security templates, the deployment strategies that we use in the immediate past election, and then look at those areas where we think we've done excellently well, try to adopt them as best practices, improve of them, and replicate them in subsequent elections. And those areas where we think we didn't do quite well, we try to improve on them. So what you notice in this gubernatorial and state houses of election is that what we put out is actually an improved version of the deployment strategy we use during the presidential and national assembly elections. Our deployment strategy today is actually an upscaled one, and an improved version, so to say, and we try to block some of the loopholes we noticed in the last election. For instance, part of our strategies this time around is to see how we can improve on our response time. We noticed that in the last election, even though the response time was good for quite a lot of places, but in some areas, for example, we were not impressed with the response time. So what did we do? We tried to make sure that our arm-bearing units, the tactical squads, were placed a bit closer to the polling units. But certainly, we resisted every call to deploy arm-bearing security men to the immediate nucleus of the voting centers. And we also try to locate checkpoints a bit closer to areas where you have clusters or polling booths. In so doing, again, the strategy is to generally improve response time. And again, we paid attention to states that are littoral in nature, states that have waterways. And so states like Rivers, states like Bayelsa, states like Lagos, Delta, Ondo, and parts of Kogi got a very strong deployment of our marine police units. Also, we decided this time around to use our police air wing. The benefit of deploying the helicopters and the operatives of the air wing is that they provide real-time intelligence. While they are air surveilling, they transmit data and information directly to us. And so it is easier to receive those information, analyze them, and make use of them immediately. They can also effectively communicate with the ground troops. So, so for some areas in the country, we made sure that we had intensive area patrols. And I can tell you that it is the aggregation of all these strategies that helped us to have the kind of peaceful conduct that we're all enjoying today.
Okay, Mr. Mba, thank you. Let me bring you in, Mr. Colquitt. At the risk of, let me not risk being looking at what is negative and looking at something that's positive. Now, you've seen how it went today, and you heard from Mr. Mba talking about the areas where they had challenges and where he thinks they've succeeded. What do you think?
Well, thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to sincerely also just empathize with the Inspector General of Police on the unfortunate incident of the accident and the death recorded from the police. Obviously, I want to believe that the Nigeria police has actually performed creditably. There's no doubt about it. And from all what ACP Mbas actually told us, specific measures have been taken, and I want to believe that these are effective measures that have been taken to ensure that there is adequate security provided during the elections. So I want to believe that so far, I'm very convinced that it's been very, very well handled.
So, those out there who would wonder how this, Mr. Mba talked about fake police being arrested, fake military being arrested, 10 in total, and they're being, as he said, they're being prosecuted, or they will be prosecuted while investigations are going on. There have been cases of violence here and there, minimal cases of violence, but these are like the same things that were witnessed one election after the other. Basically, the same kind of issues are being reported. How would you then say the police is doing? I mean, I appreciate it. We appreciate the fact that the police, as spread thin as they appear to be, they're doing the best they can. But are there no lessons being learned? I mean, with hindsight, you have been there, you've retired. What can you tell us that could have been done better?
Well, I sincerely want to believe that when we compare statistics from past elections, relatively I want to believe that incidents which we recorded are relatively low in number. And of course that attests to the fact that at least there have been better strategies that have been employed to actually reduce the number of incidents. I want to believe so. And of course, I want to also believe that in spite of the fact that the police has the responsibility to provide security, when we're talking about issues of criminality, I mean, these are things which definitely you cannot say you can halt entirely, because men are prone to criminal tendencies. So, but so far so good. I want to believe because I followed the trend all along, and I want to believe that there has been a remarkable improvement from past elections.
Do you think the deployment of security is enough?
Well, I want to believe that, at least from what I've seen, because I've actually been monitoring the process on Channels TV, I want to believe that discretionarily the police and other security agencies have done, some strategic deployments. So as to whether it's enough would definitely depend on some circumstances that we are faced. Usually when strategies are being employed, security personnel are deployed to flashpoints more than other places. So I want to believe that there have been adequate deployments in these specific areas.
Now, ACP Frank Mba in our Abuja studios, earlier you talked about moving from one phase to the next, and that now that we're in many areas in the collation and counting phase of the process, the modus operandi has changed with the focus on, while not asking you to divulge anything that is tactical or strategic, one wants to ask the question now, at this point, going forward, what are you then expecting to happen? I mean, in concrete terms, what are you now expecting to happen?
the moment votings are over at the respective polling centers, what we do, and of course you know that counting usually will take place at those polling booths, individual polling booths. And once those processes are concluded, we provide escort for both INEC officials, the result sheets, electoral materials, and escort them to the collation centers. And at the collation centers, we provide very strong security. At this time, it's more of a static security, static guard. And the details I won't be discussing, but you know, there are different levels of collation, but for each collation center, we provide adequate and sufficient security. Some of the collation centers, don't be surprised, you'll be seeing armored personnel carriers strategically positioned. But based on our threat analysis we've carried out and based on the historical facts at our disposal, we design our deployment strategy to take care of threats that we anticipate, specific and general. And so you'll see that some of our strategies will be, as a matter of fact, customized for different areas. So the kind of strategy we may be deploying in Benue State might be entirely different from the strategies we'll be deploying in Sokoto or in Rivers or in Lagos. Each state, each collation center will be receiving a deployment strategy that is customized to suit and to tackle the expected security challenges from that area.
Now, let me add this. I'm sure it's safe to assume that when this security strategy was being put together, it assumed that in most places, at least, voting would have ended by 2 and the collation would take place and counting and all of that. But as we have already been reporting, in many areas, I mean, if you take the nation's commercial capital, for example, there are areas in Lagos where voting did not start until about 3. And that would then have meant that, you know, there's a pushback in terms of time all the way down the line. Did you anticipate this in the deployment strategy? Because that introduces new dynamics into the process, especially when you talk about nightfall.
The good thing about police agencies, and particularly the Nigerian police force, is that we're trained to work 24 hours. We are not just a daytime security agent. We operate in the day and we operate at night. And in our deployment template, we actually anticipated that some areas, collations, counting, could actually drag late into the night. We've been part and parcel of the Nigeria electoral system. We police the elections. We've been policing the Nigeria elections for the past 2 decades, and so we'll be drawing from all these experiences. We know, as a matter of fact, that this operation would drag late into the night, drag into tomorrow, and in some states, we may still be on ground up till Monday or Tuesday. So we are adequately and sufficiently prepared for these exigencies.
Yeah, Mr. Kokrik, I was going to ask you to comment on that, because when I asked you earlier if you voted, you said no. Don't know why yet. Perhaps you will share. And also because we do have instances where sometimes the INEC officials say the kind of beefed up security they had at the beginning when they arrived is not quite what they had when they were packing up and leaving, even though Mr. Mbai is saying they were prepared for it right now. Is that your experience, Nico?
Well, yes, I want to say very well that even in the past, I mean, the police has always been involved in the electoral process. And like Frank Kumba said, I mean, we are always prepared to work late through the night. And when we talk about ensuring that we provide security, it's all through. I mean, policemen are always trained to be ready to work even 24 hours, really. So I want to align with the view of ACP Frank Kumba that it's obvious that adequate provisions must have been made.
So are you
handle
saying that there's no way the policemen on duty, election duties, can be compromised by the politicians or even some of the voters in any way?
Well, I mean, policemen are definitely human beings, but I want to believe that the current administration must have adequately briefed the men, and I have not seen any of them complain that they've actually not been well kitted or adequate provisions made for them, for their comfort. So in this, while I don't think there should be any reason for them to
Maybe
compromise.
you think about this, because we'll go on a quick break. We'll think about it. Maybe you give us a background of the kind of briefing policemen used to receive when you were in the force ahead of elections. That we'll look at that when we come back from this break.
But before we go on break, let me use the opportunity to thank Assistant Commissioner of Police Frank Mba for his time on the verdict today. ACP Frank Mba, thanks for joining us. We know we have to let you go at this point, and we thank you for your time and hope to see you again soon. So we go on break. We'll be back shortly. Do stay with us.